Good evening. I hope you are all well. I have not prepped an intro for this, so let's just go into it. How are you boys doing? Starting with you, Davey. How you been? Davey's
gone.
muted. We're going to come back to you. How are you doing, Jack?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Ed.
No mercy in this fucking podcast. That's what
Yeah.
I've decided tonight. I am a cruel and capricious god. What have you been up to?
Since last podcast, all I've done is played a TTS game. I haven't done any hobby. I should have done some hobby. I've been procrastinating on my hobby.
Something I love about you, Jack, genuinely, is your off week is I played a game of 40k, and that is your off week. This man, for anyone who doesn't see our WhatsApp group, this man grinds. He is always playing or doing something.
Yeah, it's the trick of having no life. You can just put all of that into 40k. Yeah, I played one game against Eldar with my Tau. If any Tau players are out there wondering how that matchup goes now that Aeldari have been nerfed, it's still awful. It's still like pulling teeth.
For the Eldar.
No, it's still miserable. Possibly more miserable now. Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, it's still not fun in any shape or form, and I'm just going to hope and pray that I never have to play against Aeldari again. But I'm sure that'll happen at an event, and I'll be sad. But yeah.
Excellent. I will say I managed to dodge Eldar events pretty consistently, so I'll see if I can teach you a couple of tricks. We got a couple of people in chat. Got Gordon, nice to see you, and Existence as well. I can now acknowledge that every week Existence says in the chat, "Evening, gents and Ed," and you know what? I fucking love it. It makes me smile every time I see it.
Is he a bot? Who knows?
He's definitely not a bot. Payne Celestine in chat as well. All right, Davey, we're back to you. Have you unmuted?
Sorry, I was on mute because my dog was singing. I am good, thank you. Yes, all good, thanks. Yeah, we've been doing lots of hobbying recently. So I went out a GT at the weekend, six games of 160, 170 models. So that was literally backbreaking. And now I'm painting 1,550 points of World Eaters before Saturday.
I feel like you should probably take a full 2K list instead of just 50.
Oh no, that's only because 450 points of it is already done because I'm buying it from Lee.
It does look good.
It's a lot of schools.
Yeah. Well, this isn't the only screen that we've seen you on recently, is it?
The only what, sorry?
The only screen that we've seen you on.
No, I also did a show yesterday with the wonderful JP. Oh,
That
and
is
of course, I was on stream at the weekend on Hellstorm. So
was it?
in
Were
my
you on
game-
once or twice? I didn't get a chance.
just once.
Round two.
Yeah, round two it was. So if you look at day one, it's on there. Really fun game for me. Some people in the chat disagree. I don't care. But I might get Fun Sponge either tattooed on my arm or at the very least put on the back of my next 6++ jersey.
Yeah, I might have to check out some Nid lists because Fun Sponge is very much the list design that I go for. If my opponent can't play the game, it becomes very easy to win. Is how I look at it. Perfect. All right, and how are you doing yourself, Scrivo?
Yeah, I am. Pretty good. I've painted one model and played two games of Warhammer. My goodness, I've had a very slow week as well, apparently. Yeah, I painted. Obviously, being a Blood Angels player now, I've painted Dante, which was good fun. Very nice model.
Excellent. And when you say you painted one model, it's not the one model that you need to paint for the hard deadline of Wednesday evening, plus recording a video for your Old Word intro section. It's not that one.
No, that figure will be primed after this show, and then painted at some point, just in time, because that's the way I work. I have deadlines. I stick to them to the second.
To the second. No, I'm very much the same. Lovely stuff. And then myself, I have been just sort of noodling around, doing bits and pieces, a little bit of painting, a little bit of playing, nothing of particular note. Wishing that I was at Goonhammer when I was looking at the group chat over the weekend. Just the event FOMO is real, and we go to so many events that it feels like every weekend someone's putting something in the chat like, "I want an RTT," which is great.
I'll be winning an RTT this weekend. So
lovely stuff.
It was criminally underattended, actually. Goonhammer, only 48 attendees, and I think the one I went to in September was like 100 and something. So
I will say, I
next
went to
time
every
go
single
to it 'cause
one.
it's really good.
I went to every single one they had in Nottingham because I live here, and now they've
Okay.
moved it. So I'm like, fuck you. It's far too much hassle for me.
I mean, I wonder why they moved to Leicester, right?
Yeah, well, so when we were at LGT, we did have dinner with a couple of the
Jack got
Goonhammer
me.
lads, and I was like, look, you've got to move back. I didn't get very far with it. But, yeah. All right, lovely stuff. So, we are here to talk about this week. Well, before we get into that, in fact, let's have a quick roundup on what we have done and what we've got coming up. Have you got that prepared, John?
I have a piece of paper with scrawl on it. That's
Right,
how
right.
prepared. We're so prepared that we're actually too prepared that we're almost too good at being prepared and at promotion. I think Chris does it better,
Some
but-
might say that we are the best at being prepared and also self-promotion. The only some that say that are ourselves, but that works. So please do go ahead.
Yeah, so as any of you avid viewers of the show and the channel would have seen on Friday, there was a lovely Cracking the Codex. It was about the Endless Swarm, and we had a lovely guest in the form of Davey, which was quite
Unending Swarm.
timely. No,
Unending Swarm.
I said intentionally for you because I know how much you really appreciate it being misnamed all weekend. And that was quite timely because obviously that was the detachment you took on the weekend. So it was kind of, I got to watch your stream and go, oh, what he's just said in the video, he's put into practice. This is quite clever. It's almost like he knew what he's doing. So good show if you want to watch it. It's only about 20 minutes as well. Then on Monday, we had State of Play, which was Death Guard, and Tom was joined by Aidan Smalley from the Disgustingly Resilient podcast, who is quite the plague lord, and it's quite a punchy little show that tells you how disgusting those buggers are.
Some might say he's quite good at
Yeah,
Death Guard and
yeah.
Warhammer in general.
And he's quite charismatic, and I did not like that.
Yeah, he's a fun guy, man.
Yeah. And then, just when you didn't think we had enough content coming out, last night we also had a live Bug Watch, which was a post-Dataslate Tyranids kind of breakdown with Davey and his buddy JP, which I caught a bit of. Was very
Yeah, it was,
informative,
good
very
show.
lively chat.
Yeah, good show. It was talking about what lists were doing really well since the data slate and some stats around what people are taking nowadays.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And then on Thursday, we're scheduling up. There'll be a matchup plus. Jack has done with Ed and Chris about Necrons. All of these shows as well from this one will be on YouTube for all of our members the day before. So that's a big thing to keep aware of. If you really like the shows and you want to get them as early as possible, if you subscribe, you will get them a day early, which I think is pretty cool. If you subscribe, I think Captain, which is like $5.99, pretty reasonable considering it's a lot of work put into this stuff. And then finally, on Friday, we've got Cracking the Codex. We've done a poll again. It looks like you've twisted our arms, and we're going to do the Sons of Sanguinius detachment, which I'm heartbroken about because I've totally not been listening to audiobooks about Blood Angels for the last 2 weeks. So totally not prepared for this. But it'll be fine.
It's a really
We'll
fun
survive.
detachment. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that out there. It's a lot of good stuff on that. And then we also have some old world content coming in the pipeline as well. Which,
Yes.
will be. There's a battle report. Did you mention the battle report? Did I?
I haven't yet, no.
Well, there is an old school White Dwarf-esque battle report coming, where I talk through the game that I played against Jack, who needs to stop typing.
Sorry, is it that loud? It was a little bit quiet.
Yeah, Jack and I played the game. He played Vampire Counts. I played some Chaos Dwarves. Had a great time, and I've done like a White Dwarf-esque top-down battle report on that one. And then we should also, I believe, coming out on Friday, have our sort of tale of ex-gamers, where we talk about which army we've picked, why we've picked the faction, a little bit about what we've committed to do, and what you'll be seeing over the next few months in terms of Old World. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about what we're here to discuss for the evening.
I've been prepping
Yes.
something. That's what I was typing. Sorry. So, I guess explain what we're going to talk about, and then I can explain what I've prepped for you.
It's pretty simple. We're going to talk about what's good right now. Jack, you're up.
So I've created a wheel, a spin the wheel thing,
Nice.
and we can spin the wheel to see which faction that we talk about and how they're currently doing in the meta.
Excellent.
So I think I can share my screen here.
You can share your screen away, young man.
As well, while we're waiting for Jack to share his screen, Chris, our captain, our beloved captain, wanted to be on tonight. I'm actually painting while standing in for him, but he unfortunately couldn't make it due to being arrested for letting fireworks off in a nursery. So
Yeah. So thoughts and prayers to Chris, and hopefully the legal battle will not be too costly because we
Yeah,
need
good luck with
those subs to go towards new microphones for all of us.
Excellent. All right, do you want to give that one a spin, that wheel? Where are we starting?
Ooh, it makes noises too. Oh, I love it.
It's quite satisfying, isn't it?
Oh,
Space
sorry,
Wolves.
Rivo.
Oh, excellent stuff.
I just bit
But-
myself. I'm bleeding.
I'm going to start off here. So there are a lot of Dark Angels players who really like playing tanky models, and their tanky models kind of got worse. There's another faction that has tanky models that really like being in Stormlance Detachment and going fast as fuck, and that is Space Wolves. My god, if you've never played against the Thunderwolf Cavalry spam list, it is brutal. I got wrecked by it at Nottingham. This was pre-Dataslate, but I don't think anything's really changed for it. I am an absolute convert in terms of the 2-brick of Thunderwolf Cavalry. I got run over by Sam Nash, I believe it was. Anyone got any thoughts on Space Wolves? Space Wolves.
they did very well at Goonhammer. There was a chap that beat Nazim with them,
Yeah.
which is no mean feat.
Yeah, well, Nassim was playing one of the worst armies in the game in Astra Militarum. Not very good. Typically struggles.
Famously B tier.
Famously B tier, absolutely. Yeah, one of his only 2 losses, and this other was to event winner Josh Roberts. So that is a pretty big scalp to take there.
I feel like the Space Wolves are one of those factions where like you'd hear nothing about them, and then you just have one person come out and just do really really well at an event out of nowhere. So I think they do have. I think they're one of those factions that have all the tools that they need to do well, but I think they're just very unforgiving because of the way their movement is, and I think they don't have very good protection against bad dice in the sense if they don't get first drop and they don't get first turn, and then the Tyranid list or Space Marine list just covers their front of the deployment zone with scouts or gaunts or something, and they can't move. That's very sad for them.
Yeah, they do struggle a little bit in that respect. Obviously, they can outflank a brick of Thunderwolf Cavalry and bring them in turn 1, potentially, as protection against that if they play against that sort of army. What I really like about them is the number of attacks they throw out that are AP 1 and damage 2 on the charge, which means that they actually match up really nicely into Necrons if you're playing the Kinetic Court style. Obviously, Necrons, a lot of top players have moved away from them because Custodes match up quite well into them. But having just something that matches up well into one of the best armies in the game right now is a good spot to be in.
Yeah, do you think we'd see more Space Wolves if they're I mean, I think it's like Black Templars, right? In that you can have a good list of Black Templars if you take the Iron Storm. But I think the cooler Black Templar list is all full of Crusaders and things like that. I think Space Wolves probably suffers from the same issue because you really want to be taking Wolfen, you really want to be taking Thundercav, and actually not everyone has those, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you could just jump on Blood Angels, you know what I mean? Like,
I think their
paint your boys
challenge
black
was
and go for the best, go for it.
the real challenge for them was their detachment was a bit shite from the get-go, and
Yeah.
a lot of what they're famous for, like the Wolfen, didn't scream out as great in Gladius. So we didn't see them as a result for that, and it's now that people have started to kind of look at what these units can get dropped into in the Codex that we've got the whole Stormlance situation. Like, we were looking at it initially, and I think like Ed and I were kind of mistaken on this, that in cracking the Codex we kind of went, I think Thunderwolf Cavalry bases are too big to make good use of because you might not hide them that well, but people are making it work. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely had concerns about moving them around the board until I had 2 bricks move around
Shoved.
me. Yeah, just fully inserted. So I'm very much a Thunderwolf Cavalry convert.
Cool.
Lovely stuff. Moving on.
Let's spin it again.
You got another spin.
Oh,
Paint Celestine says Wolfen are 16 points per model, which is true, and it's about the lowest you can go before you take a model that
Please
is
keep going.
objectively not great.
but it was things like their relic weapons or what are they called?
They went from having thunder hammers to having heirloom weapons. Basically.
Heirloom weapons, that was the word. It was just, I remember teasing some Space Wolf players for it. It was
all three of them.
Yeah.
CSM, how the mighty have fallen. What are we thinking about this one? Who wants to start off?
We haven't really seen them, have we? I've not seen many lists with them.
No, but I'm still in the camp of rumours of their demise are wildly exaggerated.
I mean, they got badly whacked, right? So they're always going to suffer from that effect of, especially people who have multiple armies. If they have armies that have got changes that make them better, why would you play that faction? And why would you play CSM, which have gotten worse than a faction that have gotten better? Like, they're not going to make you excited to play them. So I don't think people are very much experimenting with them right now.
Yeah.
But I think they've still got a lot of potential. I think Possessed are really solid. Then you can do stuff with them. I think there's a lot of the shooting units still do solid damage output, if not anything like mega oppressive as to what it was. But
Warp Talons are still dirty.
Yeah.
Strength 5 reroll wounds is just good.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who is like a CSM main in the UKTC. I think there's a lad called Sam, isn't there, who's very good. He plays Black Legion. Well, he has his army painted as Black Legion. He's played Tom and myself a couple of times. He's really good. He always was doing very well with it, even prior to when they were absolutely amazing. But
it's one of those
not
ones
an army
where,
that you have. If you've got one army, you don't have CSM, right?
I feel like there's not many, like for a lot of factions, particularly Xenos ones. I think there's a lot of faction specialists out there, but for the Chaos ones and the Imperial ones, there's a lot less faction specialists. Particularly a faction like CSM, which is obviously quite broad and can encompass like a lot of other different chaos aspects. I think
if you've got chaos players, they typically are chaos players, not like a
you've
CSM
read my mind.
player.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the, in previous editions, you could mix and match. So you might have some War Dogs because you're running them with your Death Guard. You might be playing Death Guard because now Death Guard do what CSM did, but they're doing it better at this time. You might have loads of Chaos Demons go. You know what? I fancy doing some Monster Mash. Let's give that a go. So I think you're right. I think they're still pretty solid, but it is fair. I am struggling to see a reason to play them over, particularly Death Guard.
Which is what I think the recalibration needed to be, because they were just a bit too. Everyone was taking them because they were just that good, and it was more about the army doing the work than necessarily the player needing to put in some work as well. I'm not saying it was all just the army, but you know what I mean. Like when it came to that point where you could just kind of like go, I get all the benefits without really struggling. It's just like, is there really a game there? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think we've done that one.
Yeah.
Give it a spin.
Ding dong, they're dead.
Oh, while we're talking, Jack says there was one CSM player out of 135 at the South Coast Super Major, and they dropped. That is rough. All right, Chaos Knights. I obviously have opinions on these. Who wants to say some words that are wrong so I can tell you that you're wrong?
Oh, I'll go because then you're going to disagree with me anyway, so it doesn't really change anything.
Disagree.
So I think Chaos Knights have overall, I think they've taken a bit of a whack because of the Demon Allies thing. As a sort of general overview of their power, I still think they're really good. I do feel like they're more of a. I think they're better in teams, ironically, after losing the Allies than they are in singles. I think they're really, really good in teams. But they're just they're aggressively average, I think, in singles to me anyway.
Yeah, I funnily enough, I'd actually agree. Leo says, "Hi there, first time. Are you playing? Talking about all the factions today? I think we will be. We'll pretty much hit them all, and if we don't talk about them, they obviously didn't matter. Good to have you with us. But yeah, no, I think I agree about Chaos Knights in teams. I think they're a fantastic army if you can protect them from the couple of things that deal with them well. Aggressive melee. They really don't like being charged by World Eaters. And then there are some shooting lists that just pick up 4 to 5 war dogs a turn, which means you run out of gas way too quickly. So those are the things you've got to dodge. But if you can dodge all of those armies, I think you're doing very well, which means as singles go, you're very good if you get the charmed route and you only play into stuff like I'd take 5-6 games into Aeldari. I'd love that with Chaos Knights, but I wouldn't like getting Iron Storm. the most played Space Marine detachment, so it doesn't feel great to play them in singles at the moment.
A big knight usable yet? Do you think, Ed?
No, and I will die on this hill. This is something I've put a lot of thought into. My buddy Craig is a Chaos Knights player. We talk about Chaos Knights a fair bit. He's big on the Lancer train at the moment. I think out of all of the big knights, it's the least objectionable. It has a melee invuln. It's a 4-up invuln all of the time, which is quite nice. It can advance and charge. It's can it advance and charge? No, that's in the. It does a free tank shock or something like that.
Yes,
it's like it's aggressively okay. We played a practice game. I was playing Custodes. He charged into a squad of guard and killed 0 guard with the Lancer, which was just not particularly okay, to be honest. Because
Yeah,
then
it
on
didn't
the
spark
crackback-
joy, I imagine.
No, it really didn't. On the crackback, I did like 18 wounds to it and then finished it off in the shooting phase the next turn, I think, or used it to springboard my charges, something along those lines. So it was, it wasn't impressive. Jack does say it gives the Brigands Assault, which is true, and I thought this might be good at the start of the edition, but then I realised that instead of running one big knight that soaks up all the firepower, I should just run 6 Brigands, and then also 6 Carnivores, and that's just a better place to be.
Can you still run 6 Brigands with the current points changes to Chaos Knights?
I think it's something like. Off the top of my head, I don't think you can. I think it's like 5 Brigands, 2 Stalkers, and 6 Carnivores if you want to run pure. There is an interesting list that I will give credit to Mark of Steel City Wargaming. He has been talking about running Demonettes. He was talking about running a Lancer, some Demonettes, loads of War Dogs, and just playing sort of like a big bring it down denial list, where in theory your opponent doesn't get free bring it down. I don't think that's right, but I do quite like a list where you run 30 Demonettes. I can never pronounce
Celeste.
Celeste, thank you. I just default to calling it the wrong name for comedy reasons, but that only works when people know what you're talking about. So running 30 Demonettes Celeste, and then I think there was maybe points for a couple of Nurglings in there, and you just go, suddenly my scoring plan is a lot better. I do feel the loss of the 2 or 3 War Dogs that I've had to drop here, but it does better at some things and it does worse at other things. I think they're in a fine spot. I wouldn't want to take them to a singles GT. I'd be happy to take them to a teams GT, and that's about it. All right, spin that wheel. Oh, before you do, still good as allies in Death Guard, although you can only take 2 Brigands now because they changed the points, which is the real reason they changed the points on Brigands. It's not that Brigands and Chaos Knights were too good, which I'm fine with, to be honest.
Here we go. Grey Knights.
Spicy. Who wants to take this one?
I've not played a game against Grey Knights with the changes, but I don't want to because they look very scary. I mean, it's just those Dread Knights just look horrific now to me. It just from the other end of the board, I just don't want to deal with them in any sense. I liked it much better when it was an army of all Terminators that immediately fell over to my tower shooting. I don't like it so much when they can't kill me. I like it much less when they can kill me back, and they are notably harder to kill. Which is
that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But for the health of the game, I think it's quite exciting because it puts them on par with other armies that are doing this whole jumping up and down thing that can get some shooting in there. Because before, like realistically, what was it you were putting in there that was some shooting? It was some some storm bolters on your Terminators, and that was about it, really.
Some Psy Cannons on your.
Yeah, the odd Psy Cannon. Yeah, it's like great. So having a little bit of beef that wasn't just bringing old box dreadnoughts, because I saw some people try that early in the edition, and my God, it didn't do as much as they wanted, right? So it's at least something, right? And I think it adds a bit more variety. I'm not convinced going more than sort of the 3 or 4 is worth it. I've seen some people trying to dabble with multiple character Dread Knights, and I'm not convinced yet.
I actually think that the basic one is better.
Yeah.
Because, what they hit on is the same. The weapons are basically the same apart from the number of attacks. I think you get 1 more attack or something daft.
And less
and the guns are the same. Yeah. It's just they've also got the really valuable position of having their Grandmaster on foot have ignores modifiers, which is obviously fantastic if suddenly you're like, oh, Catan, well, I'm only wounding you on 5s, apart from the other buffs I get around that. But I can, all my 2 damage is 2 damage. You're only taking 4 bin funds. This is a pretty solid place to be.
Probably still not killing it though, right?
I think
They
I
will.
think Catan will fall over to a Grey Knight Terminator charge, especially if they've got the normal Terminators instead of the Paladins. I can't remember if they get lethal hits or +1 to wound. I think it's lethal hits, but you can chunk through the big models pretty quickly, especially if you soften them up with shooting.
All that rapid fire storm bolters. If it gets through, it's just a wound, right?
Wound's a wound. Yeah.
What do you think is stopping them from just like ripping up the singles meta? Do you think it's just because they're hard to play?
Probably a little bit that. I'm not sure if. I think if you run. The last time we saw Grey Knights absolutely dominate a singles meta, it was when you were running 6 of them. You were running. What was it like? Or was it 5? I can't remember the exact. It was basically
5, but it was they had to make a rule of 1 per detachment because people
Yeah.
were taking so many Grandmasters on in Dread Knights.
Yes. So it was in 9th edition. You were spamming them,
Yeah.
and that was sort of the thing that did all the damage, and they were very hard to deal with. Now the points are such that you can't run 5 and also run the things that you need to play the game of Warhammer.
Yeah.
I think if the points shift so you can take some, get your scoring in there, get your objective holding, and put just, jam 5 baby walkers on the table, I think at that point they are, in position to dominate again.
And that's where this feels like this is the first tweak. See how it lands, and then if they need to tweak a few points, but they don't need to. That's the point, right? Like if they'd done all of it at once, like a big twist, we would have had that situation again. But by just kind of slight nudges and changing the profiles on the Dread Knight guns, I think it brings them up because they've got a pretty healthy number at the moment, right?
They've gone from 46% pre-Dataslate to 52% win rate overall. Which is not bad, because I think there are still, even with the Dread Knights, I think there's still a bit of a harder faction to play. They're not they don't play themselves necessarily.
Nah, that's where you want it.
Yeah. Lovely stuff. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's just skip it. Let's just skip it.
Oh, it's Tau!
Go on, Jack. It's your turn.
Well, I mean, I have thoughts on it. So why don't someone else say something and I can tell them why they're wrong? I'll still lead from your book, Ed.
I wish that they could still do stuff in melee like 9th edition. That's my hot take. I just want a back. I just want a back. I got nothing else other than fuck. I love them in 9th edition, and they're so dull to me now. I think it might be you, bud. Lay it on us.
I think Tau are in a funny spot because I think they have really good matchups into some of the really good armies. I think they're really good into Space Marines. I think they're really good into Custodes. I think they struggle into Necrons. And they also do, I think it's like a 55-45 in their favor against Guard. Most of the time it'll come down to skill, I think, for that matchup. But then there's like a bunch of like kind of still commonly played but somewhat fringe picks they kind of struggle against. Death Guard is quite hard for them to handle. Drukhari can be quite hard for them to handle in the new detachment. I think if you haven't played against that before, that can be really difficult. Sisters is very problematic. Eldar, like, as I said before, it still feels practically impossible. If the Eldar player knows what they're doing, feels like you have very little agency in that game. So I expect Tal to end up like aggressively average, but the problem is that in their good matchups they're really good, and then the person you're playing against probably doesn't have much fun. And then in the matchups where they're bad, they're really bad, and the Tal player doesn't have much fun.
That's the nature.
So it just ends up being really polarizing, and then equaling out to 50%.
Because that's the nature of the one phase army, really, right? Like you're really good in your shooting. If you're not really good in your shooting, you've got nothing else. So it's just that's always been their challenge as well.
Yeah.
Like, I've never not seen an edition since third when they landed where there's not been a swing either way. And I'm hoping they'll get it right with the Codex, but we'll have to see. That's on the horizon, right? So it won't be too much further for us to.
There were so
to
many
go.
double, triple, quadruple negatives.
I'll be honest.
I lost track. Were you saying that they've always had problems with being a one-phase
Yeah,
army?
it's
Cool.
it's always been a thing where they're either too good or not too good. It's like they can't get it just on the line. It's always they're underwhelming and no one wants to play them, but everyone still remembers the dark times where they were good. And then when it flips back, it reminds people, and it's unfair because it's bad rule writing essentially sometimes, or something
From
like
Games
that
Workshop.
is actually to blame. Yeah, so it's like
Never.
we should not blame the players. They're just trying to have fun with their toys.
However, they
In their
are
one
fundamentally
phase.
broken people for picking that faction.
Yeah.
Hi, I played
True.
Tau.
I own some Tau in 3rd edition. It's okay.
Yeah.
I will say I am. While my expectation for Kroot is pretty low to the ground, I'm keeping my expectations low, so I might be pleasantly surprised. I do think when that Codex comes out, Tau are going to be redonkulously good. Because the common tools that get handed out for factions in these 10th edition codexes, your 3-inch deep strike, your lone op strat, your reactive moves, stuff like that. If Tau get their hands on those kind of abilities, they're just going to shred people.
So
They're
what you're
just gonna
saying is
absolutely
crisis
ruin
suits are going to go up in
games.
points again.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
And Riptides will go down.
But which of the suits is going to get the 3-inch deep strike? That's the question.
It'll be the
Probably
Monk
that.
card attachment, and it'll be for probably any suit with a jetpack, I'd imagine.
And it probably gives you like a +1 to wound and +1 AP as well, just because
Just
It'll-
kick
yeah,
them
it'll be a
down.
strat,
and balanced.
right?
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Cool.
Then there'll be an
Yeah, no,
enhancement for turn 1 deep strike.
I think that's fair. I'm also got low expectations on the Kroot. That's one of the aspects of the Tau army I've never enjoyed. The auxiliary. I didn't mind the Vespid. They just did actions for me in 9th, but now I'm.
They'll be back.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, and in greater numbers.
Yeah, they're very Marmite auxiliaries, I think.
It's one of those armies almost in that respect, right? That you either play them as pure Tau, or you have a smattering of those in your collection that only get used because you want to. And then it's only in 9th when suddenly you kind of needed action monkeys that suddenly you saw the kind of the bridging of the kind of the gap.
If I will say, if I wanted to play a fucking Gribbly faction, I'd be playing Tyranids. I wouldn't be playing Tau. That's but we're getting off track. We're just talking about modelling.
It's all good. It's okay to be wrong.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, on that note, how about we spin that wheel?
And the wheel says World Eaters.
Davey, you are building and painting some World Eaters as we speak. What is going on in the world of Eaters?
Well, obviously the Exalted went up in points, which was, I mean, a few things went up in points, but the Exalted I think was the starkest change, and like that's rough because they were such a good unit. Also, the Mo and his amazing weapon, I can't remember what it's called, the glaive, the one that gives you an extra D3 attacks and D3 damage every time you hit
Berserker glaive.
Yeah, the Berserker glaive, yeah, the one you could just like literally like one-shot Magnus with. So I understand, like, I think it's all fair changes, to be fair, and now you just get to try a few more units from the book, so Chaos Spawn are being taken a bit more. So I'm a big fan of those because when they die, you can stick the objective for a CP, which is a nice little, turn 1 you put the thing out, turn 2 it gets shot, and you just stick it. Turn 1 you put it out, your opponent then shoots it, and then you stick it, and then you still get your primary, which is really nice. On some boards as well. So yeah, overall, I think it's just challenging people to try different builds, because Anthony Vanella's build was pretty awesome pre-Dataslate, but now you can still use that just with a few different bits and bobs. I've seen people take more jackals and drop a unit of 8-bound, I think it was, to try and make the difference in points. So that's that's a vibe, but you could also do what I'm doing and take a lot of skulls, which is fun.
Yes.
I like how they nerfed the ability for Angron to come back, and then someone looked at the fucking Lord of Skulls data sheet, went, hold on, this means it comes back every time, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. No,
Most. Just
you
most of the
you can add or minus to a dice for every, I think, unit you kill.
Isn't it model?
It's model.
Well,
It's
I
model.
thought it was model, and then I listened to someone's podcast and they said unit. Okay, right, model.
Instead
So-
of reading
I read it out to
podcasts.
you half an hour ago, Davey. So
yeah, I'm painting. I'm
Real.
painting. But you got to, like, I don't know. I'd have to, you know what? It's one of those ones you have to check with the judge, right? Because it says you can make that to a dice, or does it say the dice? Because if you can only amend one dice, you need to start with 2 6s to then get 3 6s.
No, it's just every time you kill a model, you can move a die. It's like it's written in the way that all Warhammer rules are written in, that like each action is separate because each die roll is separate. So it just happens, my dude. Like you kill something, you're like, I'm gonna flip this dice.
Yeah, that's pretty good, especially on the Lord of Skulls, which Check's book has 2 blast weapons if you want at strength 14 each, or like strength 10 each, -3, -4, millions of damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw that and just thought, I wonder if anyone's bringing Custodes. -1 damage. Sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
So no, it looks, they seem pretty cool. Weirdly, I'm hyped about Spawn because I'm just in the middle of converting some kind of weird Spawn creature. So yeah, I think there's legs. I still think they can win stuff. I know Jack Harpster won in America with something, but he is Jack Harpster. They can win with Grey Knights, for Christ's sake. So
the
yeah,
fucking
I
biggest
think
gaslighting of fucking 10th edition was Jack Harpster winning a GT with Grey Knights going, yeah, no, they actually work really well into Eldar. Everyone else playing them and just going, I hate this. What's going on?
it's just a flex, man. Absolute
yeah.
flex.
It turns out he might be quite good at the game. Some might say.
Yeah, so I think it opens the doors to trying different things. The sad thing is that Terminators didn't come down because they are pretty crap. Things like that. So yeah, hopefully, I think it's going to be a really interesting time for World Eaters. They don't have that many units to choose from in the first place, so now that it opens the door to some more units, happy days.
I think they're kind of in a similar boat to Chaos Space Marines, where they got a lot of negative changes, and that it creates a pretty bad feel bad on it, that you don't really want to play it. So they're definitely going to have like a player exodus. So there's not, and when that happens, there's less innovation for lists and stuff. So yeah, I think they're obviously going to be around considerably less than they were before. But yeah, I think you're definitely right, Davey. I think they've 100% still got legs.
They're not going to be they're like Votann, right? They're not going to be. There's not going to be many innovative lists for them. I personally don't think, just because you don't have that many units to choose from. You know, yes, you do. You can lean into Mauler Fiends and Predators, but they just don't really synergize with what you're trying to do. So it's an interesting one. I think, yeah, there's a couple of list archetypes that are going to get run, and then one will be the best one, and everyone will run that. But that's the way those armies are going to be like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair enough. I shall spin the wheel again then.
It's going to be Admech.
And the wheel says...
Oh, they haven't really done much.
Custodes.
Custodes
Who?
are bad guys. Don't worry about it. Don't nerf them. It's fine. It's super fine.
I've played one game into them, Post-Slate. Yeah, it was rough. Very rough.
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm still in the limit testing phase of my Custodes. So I played the game against Paul James through all one squad with Trajan into the middle of his army. He was running 20 Deathwing Knights or something like that. Maybe was it 30? I don't know. Lots of them. And then Trajan's unit didn't die, and I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. And then the turn after, when I didn't have the Feel No Pain or the CP for the -1 damage, they just absolutely crumpled. I was like, oh, yeah, no, this is... Yep, no, I'm still got to think a little bit with this army.
Yeah.
Custodes, I feel like, are that perfect aggressive player army, because they very much reward you for taking the initiative in the game and forcing your opponent to play around what you want to do. If you end up playing the Custodes game, you're going to end up in a world of pain, basically. So I think that's the kind of thing which makes them a bit of a the kind of faction that tends to do really well against less experienced players, which is a really good way to cement a reputation for being overpowered.
Yeah,
Even if you're like maybe like a 54% win rate army, so.
No, I think they're good. I think they're mostly figured out, which unfortunately makes them boring to me. Once the list is sort of like cracked, it's like, well, there's not much room for play here. If you
what do you think to this? Oh, sorry, Ed. What do you think to this claim, guys, of when Custodes are this good, it ruins it for all the other fast combat armies, or the other combat armies?
So the funny thing I was going to say is the way to beat Custodes is to not play their game and, walk slowly towards them. If you can be everywhere around them, if you can hit them with the fucking NAM special, like, you can absolutely break a Custodes player heart, body, and soul. Like, yes, they can, layer defenses on a unit. That's true. But if you can bait it out with your cheap unit of Incubi, if you put 5 Incubi into them and you go, look, the numbers say that I kill this many models, and your opponent goes, oh, I'm going to use one of my defensives, if you can sort of tease out the resources. Or, turns out, if you just put your entire army into the entire Custodes army, Sky Splinter Drukhari just pick up Custodes models. I played a game against Rob Kimpton. I was like, I'm just going to test this. I put a unit on each objective, and he put units into all of my units, and way more died than I was comfortable with.
Yeah, because you can only fight first with one of them, right?
You can only fight first in one place. You can only interrupt in one place. You can only use your -1 damage in one place. I had, I think, enough CP to interrupt and use a defensive strat, and I still lost way more than I was comfortable with. It was rough.
I think, they're different. I think they're a faction that have, unlike where CSM and Aeldari were in the last Dataslate, they actually have like very visible, like very obvious, not obvious, very distinct counters and things you can play around and against their army. But again, it's one of those binary things where if you don't have what you need to deal with Custodes, if you're running, for example, World Eaters or Space Wolves or something, you're going to have a rough time because Death Guard, getting around some of this stuff with Custodes, the way they play, it's going to be quite hard. But if you're Guard or Tau or Drukhari, as you said, one of that have those tools that can deal with what Custodes can bring, then you can deal with them, which I think is a much better place to be than we were looking at the last Dataslate, because that's a good way to dodge nerfs, is to drop a couple games.
Absolutely. And I didn't miss you earlier. Good shout out to Jack, who did go 4-1 with his Death Guard at the Super Major this weekend. Really good result there. And he says his only loss was into Custodes because they are that brick wall into melee armies, which is something I enjoy anyway.
All right. Do you want me to spin again?
Go ahead.
Yeah, man.
All right, we're looking at...
While you're doing that, Sean says, so to beat Custodes is to play Dark Eldar. No. If you want to beat Custodes with Dark Eldar, all you have to do is be Rob Kimpton. And by that, I mean have played Drukhari at tournaments for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
If you do that, you'll be fine. But anyone else might struggle a little bit. Who wants to go first with Death Guard?
I can go first with Death Guard.
Go ahead.
I played 2 games with Death Guard just because I thought they were really interesting. And they're such an interesting faction. I think there's a lot of tools there, and I think they got a lot of depth to them in terms of player skill. Like if you play them a lot, like someone who's really good at Death Guard will get a lot out of that army. And there's like a lot of room for learning how to play them. So I think they're quite satisfying in that aspect. And then they also have a bunch of like little rules that can flip matchups. Things like the fights first from is it the Putrefier? I think that's the one that does it. It might be the other one. But there's the character that gets fight first with his unit. It's a lot of damage output from the Death Guard units, especially when you get the contagions, when you start learning how to play around them. You can do a lot of cool stuff there. So there's and debuffing is rather than buffing yourself is coming at like a unit by unit matchup in a different way. So a lot of armies aren't necessarily going to be prepared for that. They might be prepared for you to put -1 damage on yourself, they might be prepared for you to do -1 wound to yourself, or half damage, or feel no pains and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, if you're dropping the opponent's toughness, if you're dropping their what they need to roll to hit, if you are dropping the what's the other one that they do?
You can do OC as well.
Armor save is one, yeah. These kind of like reductions on the enemy are things that a lot of time people won't account for, because it's quite a unique thing to the Death Guard. It's not like a lot of factions do that. So I think they kind of have the benefit of not a lot of people prepping for Death Guard, as well as having like a unique way that they play. So I think, yeah, I think they're quite well sat. I think they're going to be one of those sleeper factions this data slate, to do quite well.
Yeah, I think they're good. They were definitely an army I was considering picking up. They have hit a point where I think, they've been reasonable for the last few months. The meta has changed. Melee stuff's quite good. They deal with melee well. Obviously, Custodes are a thorn in the side there, but if all your other melee matchups are probably pretty good, and they slap. Like, the amount of damage output they put out from their Plague Marine squads is kind of unbelievable until you see it. I found they just pick up way more than you think that they do.
Yeah.
And they can do mortals as well, right?
Yeah. So they have been nerfed. Now they can only throw 2 grenades a turn, whereas before they could throw N+1 grenades, where N is the amount of the putrefiers that you had. A blight spawn, I think it was. Sorry, the one that has grenade in its hand, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Looking good. And also they benefit from the ignores modifiers change. Mortarion giving ignores modifiers.
Yeah.
Obviously, he uses it in a really fluffy way. He stands at the back of the board,
Pew, pew, pew,
and
pew, pew.
your indirect fire just absolutely rips through things, but that's fine. Jack says Death Guard are good into Custodes. That's fair. I will take your word for it. You've played a lot more Death Guard than me. My experience has gone the other way, but it might have just been, the one match that I played. Lovely stuff. Anything else on Death Guard, or should we move on?
I just think they're really cool, and
The models are great. I love them thematically.
Yeah, I really like Death Guard. They're probably my favorite Chaos faction. I probably won't ever play a Chaos faction, but if I did, it would be Death Guard. They're very cool.
Yeah. Fucking movement 4 though.
Ugh.
Boils my piss. Right, spin again.
Hey.
Votann.
Less boats, still guns.
Yeah.
Still okay.
Still pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Not as bullshit as what they were doing with all the transports before, but
I think unfortunately they haven't changed very much from last data set to this one. They're probably going to build pretty similarly, just with less stuff. I think a lot of the units are gonna, because obviously, as Davey said before, there aren't many units in Votann, so I think there's not going to be much like dynamic changes to their lists. Like, you're not going to see all berserkers coming out anytime soon, I don't think.
We've seen some changes to people running land forts instead of loads of Sagittars.
Yeah, I was about to say that's probably like the most change you're going to see.
I went into them. I went against them at the weekend on Purge the Four. A chap called Ben Martin, who listens to the show, and Tyranids aren't good at Purge the Four at the best of times, but I got ruined in that matchup. It was a tough old game. But one of the things that I thought was interesting was that he took more Hearthguard rather than less. So he had a 10 and 2 5s, and boy, was that really good. And it's interesting, though, an interesting decision when you think, because if everyone's taking for Custodes, you think that people would then be like, okay, I'm going to try and, that kind of falls into the same space. But then it got me thinking as well, if you've got cover and you can void armor, -2, which usually takes a Custodes to their invul, isn't actually doing anything or very little to a Hearthguard. So it's actually keeping them alive.
Yep, no, that's fair. I believe Ben Martin was one of the victims this weekend on Josh Roberts' Road to Glory at the Warhammer GT. You had just an absolute fucking belter of a performance. Like, what a who's who of UK TC players to run through. I guess we'll get to that when we play Necrons, but he did not have an easy run.
I think Votann fall into that same sort of spot that Death Guard do, actually, like sort of not quite in the top tier, but like well above mid tier. Like they're just going to be really solid.
They're kind of pushing to the top, but not quite breaking that ceiling into
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the top 8 almost.
They have some good matchups. They have some less good matchups. Yeah, that's pretty much how I'd see him.
In a healthy
Alright.
place.
Yeah, not awful.
Come on, Space Marines.
What's the wheel going to say?
Skip. Oh,
Yeah.
Blood Angels.
Oh,
Oh, you're right. We'll
hey.
skip. We will skip.
So,
So
the
this-
number one Space Marine faction, probably.
It's a weird one. I think it's probably not the most played because I still think we're seeing a high percentage of Dark Angel Ironstorm, where it's Ironstorm with some Dark Angel units. Not that it's actually really Dark Angels.
A Dark Shroud.
Yeah.
And Azrael.
And Azrael does not make a Dark Angels army. But anyway, with Blood Angels, I still think this is, again, another one of those traps where you'll see a very small percentage of people bringing Sons of Sanguinius, but I still think you'll tend to see it being in a Space Marine detachment like Gladius. But
Just take
where it
Death
works.
Company, play Gladius, jam your models up the board.
It's
You're gonna
great.
win your games. You're like, I think it's the best way to play Marines. I think Ironstorm's very good. I personally like Blood Angels more than I like the Ironstorm list.
Yeah, they've got a very good suite of characters, and some of the stuff that people aren't taking, like the Sanguinor, doesn't appear in every list, but is a very spicy little character that stays in reserve. Someone charges, you drop it into the combat, and it's got fight first. It's just, some really cool tech that they've got, and we've not been seeing it because their original detachment was so lackluster, I suppose is probably the way to put it.
Well, let's just be honest about why we weren't seeing them. Because fucking Deathwing Knights. Like, if you could play Space Marines and take Deathwing Knights, was there a reason to play another faction? Not really. They were just
Black
so
Templars.
efficient.
Yeah, but that
Black
took a
Templars
while
were
as
the
well.
exception. Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like their detachment changes for the index for the Sons of Sanguinius is cool, but it doesn't give you the agency to get your models across the board. So
I think the one way you can build the list is you take them as Flesh Terrors, and you take Gabriel Seth, because he gives one unit of Death Company that he's joined to advance and charge. And I think that is the way to build them if you go Sons of Sanguinius.
Yeah.
I think if you're going Gladius, you go, I'll just take all of the good characters and not lock myself into just taking Gabriel Seth.
Yeah.
But if you really want to go Sons of Sanguinius, that does slap. +2 strength and +1 attack is a lot of output.
So, as someone who, when he looks at Space Marines, his eyes glaze over, what's the difference now between now and, I guess, last Dataslate that makes Blood Angels the premier choice? Is it just the nerfing of Dark Angels?
Kind of, yeah. Honestly.
So the difference is now where you'd have -1 damage Terminators with a 3 damage weapon, you instead, for less points, you get jump pack guys that reroll to hit, have a melter pistol, so 6-inch melter pistol. If you're within 3, it's melter 2, D3 damage, and then they've all got power fists. And by default, they all reroll to hit. So you don't need to be going into an oath target, and that's the biggest problem in Space Marines is you kill your oath target, great. Anything else going into anything else, yeah, you hit on 3s a lot of the time, but it's still swingy. And then combine these with a character, someone like Lamartis gives them lethal hits, so full rerolls with lethal hits, just going straight through big toughness stuff.
Were people just sleeping on them before, or is it?
I think
Deathwing Knights.
It was
-1
that
damage and
situation.
4 wounds. Like, it's hard to
Fair
overstate
enough.
how
Fair
good that
enough.
is.
And I still think a lot of people don't own that many Death Company jump pack guys that don't have Thunderhammers. So it's people snapping arms off and now doing it now. It feels like the thing.
Lee in chat, feeling slighted, says he saw the start of the video. You don't know any CSM specialists who have played them across multiple editions. I did drop your name at one point, Lee. Keep watching. I'm not sure if it was when you're talking about or later in, but I did.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the other Lee.
Yeah, I've got PTSD. I don't
No.
talk about Lee Churchwood because the last time he played me, he came from all sides and it was horrendous.
Well, that brought an image.
And then we played a game of Warhammer.
Lovely stuff. Moving on. What's our next
Slanesh.
faction?
The wheel says.
Drukhari. we have put out a fair chunk of content on Drukhari. Scribbler John and myself did a video with Tom Lohman, who's obviously been playing them. He's won a GT with them. He put out another video himself. I think he did a walkthrough of the detachment. We've obviously got a couple of Drukhari players on the team who have been feeding off each other in a terrifying manner. I have played into them and lost. They're good, but they're where Drukhari should be. They're a finesse army. If you are good with Drukhari, if you're good with that sort of glass hammer, if you're not playing into like the matchup that just ruins you, you're gonna have a good time. If you're picking them up for the first time, or you're used to playing more like Custodes lists, you're gonna really struggle. There's a big learning curve.
I don't think it's a very forgiving army, right?
No.
I think that's the thing, is like you've got to have patience to get it right.
And once you've played against Sky Splinter once, you see where the ins are. And so I think a lot of people at the moment are being caught out a bit by how different it is to play compared to Real Space Raiders. And I think over the next couple, it's the fact that literally stuff comes out of a boat, doesn't just shoot you and then hop back in. It charges at you and does slap. Like, that's terrifying. Like, I've gotten very complacent to Drukhari just being a sack of shit in combat, and seeing Incubi hitting into things and picking them up is terrifying. But it's where they should be.
I think the main one is the ability to get back in the transport after you've killed something in combat. That just changes the game so much for that army.
But not only is that a strat, you can do that with a Venom as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just on the data sheet.
Yeah, it changes so much. The ability to put like 10 witches and Lilith back into any number of witches doesn't actually matter. Lilith back into a transport, raider, I guess specifically. It just changes the ability for you to deal with them in such a considerable way. Because sometimes you're just not going to have an answer for a transport sat beside a ruin that people are going to get out of and then kill something and get back in. And then if you destroy the transport, then you get on the other side of the wall and all that. There's a lot of jank you can do with that faction. But it feels, at the same time, it feels a lot more fair. You know how when you're playing against like pre-Dataslate Aeldari, it just feels really you feel like you couldn't do anything. It was really unfair. Whereas now it's just, this is more of a, okay, well, I've been caught out by this, but I know how to play around it, and you can play around it. Yeah. So while it is janky and tricksy, like it's got a lot more counterplay, which may not work out in the long term for Drukhari win rate, but I think maybe the surprise factor is gonna boost them up for a little bit, because it would catch people out so easily. Sky Splinter.
Lovely stuff. All right, moving on. What do we got?
Okay. Ooh. How many left now? Look, it is. It's Tyranids.
Well, we check out the video that me and JP did yesterday for like a more deep diving into it. I also listened to Tyler Bartel today on the Art of War Down Under podcast, saying that he thinks that Tyranids are the most underrated, or was it underrated? Yeah, maybe underrated, like good faction in the game. I don't agree. I think they just have. I think they've got qualities, but I think it's difficult. Like, I think there's two viable detachments. There's Invasion Fleet, which is about 55% of players playing that at the moment, and that is good because it gives you options into everything. Or you take Unending Swarm, and you forget how to play 40k completely and how to play this other army that is like a different game than what you are used to playing. I think both are fun, but it is realizing that you're not going to turn up and just table people. And I think a lot of criticism about the faction is people kind of saying, well, I just want to table people. I lose stuff quicker than everyone else. Yeah, of course you do, because we're the invasive species. We're just like throwing ourselves into the game, right? And I think that's what GW have potentially tried to build into the game design, right? We're expendable mess. Like, we just die and then other things happen. We come back again next time. So I think it's just about developing your play style and things like that. In terms of post-Dataslate, T-Fex has come down Screamer Killers come down. Still not great. That's and then the good stuff went up. So Neurolictors went up. Even Pyrovores went up. So it's like it's the changes weren't amazing, and I think if you had a good list, the points went up, and now you're kind of going, well, I guess I just have less things. Gargoyles going up. I mean, not as much as they should have, but it's just basically your list costs more, so you have one less unit.
Yeah. But that's them pulling on levers, right? They've tried to establish this situation where not every army just goes, I point enough things at a thing, it kills them. Your army's been given this kind of thing where they're going, right, you're basically gonna have baby teeth for your damage. So some stuff's really good, but on average things don't hit as hard. But instead you have to play in a different way. And I think that's where they're trying to kind of encourage you, because before the data slate, there was a lot more kind of Vanguard kind of dabbling.
Yeah.
And I don't think people were finding that was as rewarding, right? So as a result, they've gone, if I'm just going to be trying to do mission play and just die, I may as well come back if I'm going to die, right? So it's kind of, people are progressing and working their way through the codex bit by bit.
It's funny you say that. So pre and post data slate. Now it is a small sample size, so take it with a pinch of salt. But essentially, what happened pre versus post is we lost lots of synaptic nexus, and everyone else gained players, except for Assimilation Swarm, which still has only one guy or gal just pumping away that detachment.
Yeah.
The biggest winner was Invasion Fleet, so people just going back to Old Faithful white bread. But Vanguard Onslaught saw a significant amount of players as well. Unending Swarm saw a few more come into it as well. So, I think people are trying to make Vanguard Onslaught work. I don't think it's seen that much success, and I think it's just too squidgy. And the other ones just kind of have a little bit more survivability or an answer to the problem. I think, to be honest, as long as Purge of the Foes and mission packs, you're never going to, it's very rare you're going to see Tyranids hit the top.
Yeah, that is a mission that they definitely struggle with.
But we can't complain about pumping spore mines everywhere and scoring for free, right? Like, come on.
Exactly. It's trade-offs, right? That's where it should be. There should always be a downside. There shouldn't be you can deal with every army in every situation.
So why not, John?
Because that's the game.
Because then you'd be Aeldari.
That's 9th edition Tyranids.
Yeah, and I just don't want to go back to that. That's why if everyone's in the squidgy middle, at like 50-something, we're all gravy, right?
Cool. All right. What do we got up next?
Okay.
Oh boy. Can't wait for Dark Angels to come up.
The wheel says Dark Angels isn't actually on there.
That's why I said it, because it's not. It's all right.
Yikes.
We don't have a book. It's fine.
All right. Sisters of Battle.
It's all right, book. Jack doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it.
I mean,
Sisters are great, by the way.
They're the best army that's got a bad win rate.
Yeah. Again, it's an army that we don't see often enough because it is like AdMech. It's hard to play, but it's also expensive to buy because it's relatively modern, and there hasn't been a Christmas box that wasn't just all the Nundams.
No, guys, they're at 54%. Fuck. we need to break the emergency glass. There is a problem. The hard to play faction is at 54%.
Yeah.
I don't know what changes they had in the data slate, but I can tell you that a Castigator is 140 points. And check out that data sheet.
It's very good. I've got one
What
painted,
I love
half
about
painted over there.
Sisters players discovering the Castigator, getting rid of the Exorcist, putting in the Castigator, is that Space Marine players went, this Predator's pretty good, eh?
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Unrelated, I do have a lot of Predator parts on their way to me next week. No shame. No shame.
But yeah, no, Sisters good in skilled hands, very good.
And I think that's where we want factions to land, right? That they play kind of 2-3 into an okay player, into skilled hands, they do better. Because then you're getting the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think there's a limit to how badly, like how much you want to do that, right? Because then you end up with because if you just have every faction is good in the hands of good players, like there should be some easy factions, because if not, then the less skilled players are going to have a really hard time getting getting into
That's
the
what
game.
fucking 10th edition has been.
Have
Like,
you played
fucking-
Warhammer ever? Because that's always what it's been.
That's a really interesting take, Jack.
The gap between the haves and the have-nots is the lowest it's ever been in 10th edition. I think
Yeah,
it's the primary, but I would like to see more skill expression in the game. Obviously,
Oh
it's
yeah, I
still
mean,
there.
I
The
could.
very good players still win every game they play, so it's not.
Yeah, we could sit here and talk probably for another entire podcast about
Yeah.
primary and secondary missions.
Oh, God,
So
yeah.
someone write that down. And then, but yeah, I think that having armies like sisters is like they're a weird one because they're kind of like they do a similar thing to Aeldari to me with the fate dice into miracle dice. So that can the ability to remove variability from your dice rolls is always going to be a really strong mechanic, and good players are always going to be able to take advantage of that. So I think they're always going to sit fairly like high. I think they will always be that one of those, as long as they have the mechanic being as it is. I think they will always have a higher win rate amongst good players. So yeah, I think you'll see probably like one or two like really good sisters players like on the top tables, and then like no other sisters players because people aren't going to play them unless they basically just play only that, right? Like near enough.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it, right? It's as Jack says. As Ed says. If the person who wins the GT should be like the best player, right? Who's figured out their list and their thing. Whereas if it's just an easy faction, like then people like Ed just pick up Tyranids and win and go 4-1, right?
Thanks, buddy.
Yes, you can think about.
I also did this. I did this in 9th. Don't worry. I went 4-1 with Tyranids, and I've not went 4-1 since.
I went 5-0 with Nids, but
that was it. Yeah.
Not that we're keeping track.
Not that we're counting, because I can't count that high. I've never won that many games.
It's
You've
the
got
difference
5
between your
fingers in
skill
hand.
ceiling and your
Right,
skill
I'm going to
floor,
stop you
right?
here. Here's the problem: Sisters are at a 54% win rate.
Yeah,
that's
Okay.
very high.
How many
It's
players?
still within the balance window.
No. We're talking about them as if half the players go fucking 1 and 4, and then Leonardo da Vinci weaves his masterpiece, fucking draws some schematics, the brain, the mind palace opens, and you're left with nothing as Jack Tight goes, yep, 100 to 31, and that's about it.
No.
But that's
But I
not
think it
what
comes down to how many players, Ed, right?
enough that I think that I'm concerned that
Okay.
I'll be honest, I hadn't looked at them closely
No.
up until this point. I was like, oh, good players are good. The less skilled players are going to struggle. Now I don't think that's the case. Now I think that the less skilled players are probably sat in a more reasonable spot, which is good for them.
Yeah.
But then maybe it's easier for the good players to pick up, and maybe we see even more players picking up sisters. The only thing stopping them, I think, is the fact that it's a very expensive army to get into.
Maybe they're a sleeper hit because everyone was getting excited about new shiny codexes or looking at things like Guard because people were seeing great success with that. That as a result, if they're having to pick an army, they're not necessarily going and looking at the other stuff that's kind of sat there in the corner.
Yeah, you can't take 680 points of indirect with them, so
630. I've been
well,
corrected.
There's only 4 factions that are less played than sisters, if you include the ones that don't have any players.
And there's 2 of those Titans.
Well, no, I was not including the ones that don't have any players, like the Titans and stuff. It's just like it's like Admech, Space Wolves, GSC, Thousand Suns, and Death Watch. It's like
interesting. Looking forward to the Thousand Suns.
It's not surprising really on any of those, but
yeah,
for similar reasons though. They had 2, like Death Watch and Thousand Suns both had big kind of corrections early enough that people are now kind of put off by them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting in that they're kind of having that similar thing where the player base shrinks down to like the diehards who play it only, but not because the faction isn't good, but because it's difficult to get into with the cost of it. So that keeps the win rate like higher than it would normally be in this situation of it being a low population army. But that's pretty interesting.
All right, let's move on. What do we got next? Doesn't seem to be Thousand Suns on there. So before we go to Space Marines,
I will add them.
Let's just talk about Thousand Suns now. Yeah, Thousand Suns.
Yeah, that suits the Space Marine armor. Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. How are we feeling about Thousand Suns? They're looking like a sleeper hit to me.
They're if you were going to call something a skill army, they're very much in that same ballpark that I think people get frustrated. Like our own Tom played them at an event, got quite frustrated with how well he did because I don't think he felt he'd practiced enough, which then means you bounce onto something you feel a little bit more comfortable with. And if that's happening with quite skilled players, I think the less skilled players may have the same frustration and go, right, I'll go to my other Chaos army and find something more comfortable, like, say, their 8th edition new army they got in Death Guard, which is a bit more forgiving.
Yeah.
What changes did they
That's
get
what
in
it
the
feels
data slate?
They didn't.
It's
Didn't
just
get
that
any?
they're just hard to play, so it's just
Everything
think
else got
people
bad around,
time out.
got worse around them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I don't. I'll be honest. I don't know enough to say a lot about Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
me
will
neither.
be watching them with great interest.
It's
I
a
feel
very
like
There's just
they
so
want
much.
better.
game. Yeah.
There's just so much going on with that faction, right? There's so many rules, so many things you can do. The enhancements gives you so many more options. So there's just like 10,000 tools, right? For you to do stuff with.
And micromanage as well. Like, it's so
Yeah, like
unforgiving if you don't spend your Cabal points wisely.
yeah. So and it's another one of those things where I think, funnily enough, I think they're in a similar position to Guard, because I think they're good, they're strong, but because they're like unforgiving, that pulls them down to me, and like it's just they don't have that. They just don't have the sort of trying to think. Guard are a little bit more of a baseline, so we'll talk about Guard in a minute. But yeah, they're much more unforgiving, even though they are good, and they're like more vulnerable. I think to like they don't have the good bad luck protection, which I think knocks them down a little bit as well. So, but yeah, but you have to play really well to get the most out of them, which is just one of those things where it's just gonna make things difficult. It's gonna be difficult for them to see how good they are on the overall win rates, I think.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Jack's just pointed out in the chat that they desperately rely on Magnus. So if you've got, say, an influx of, say, Ironstorm Space Marines that are really good at shooting big targets that are quite hard to hide, if your entire army collapses just based on some good shooting that's on 2s to hit 'cause it can see you, with rerolls because you're a big target, that's your game over, right? So if you've got just a house of cards, it could be quite frustrating as a game.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, should we talk about Space Marines because we landed on them?
Yeah.
I think not much to say. Ironstorm good. We've talked about Blood Angels and Space Wolves, which are, I think, the interesting ways to play Marines. Anything other than sort of Ironstorm catching your eye? It's just Gladius with the Blood Angels, really, isn't it?
I think the Firestorm, I think it is. I think that one has a lot of potential. That one feels really good.
It doesn't have advance and charge.
I knew it.
No, but it has advance and shoot. And you can do a lot with Land Raiders and the enhancements in that are really good as well. And some of the strats are really strong. It's literally just the detachment rule isn't a combat based one.
I like Firestorm. I think it's my favorite out of all the detachments. I don't think it's up there personally. If your game plan is around a Land Raider, it's too easy to have bad matchups.
Or 2 Land Raiders. But
Ironstorm can probably pop both of them on turn 1.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm just trying. I really like it in Black Templar. I think it's really solid there, and I like it for just like standard Space Marines. I think they just have a lot of potential. Like if you're taking the aggressors with the flame gauntlets, I think they can put out some really nasty damage. It's just one of those ones which I think it's a little bit of a sleeper. People are going to think it's maybe not good, but I think it's actually got a lot of potential. Like if you played it a lot, practiced a lot,
Here's the
then
thing:
you can get a lot out of it.
if you take the aggressors, who went up in points, by the way, if you take them in Gladius, they will also do a lot of damage. So like, I struggle to find reasons to want to play it competitively. Don't get me wrong; it's my favorite. It's the coolest. I think it's good. I just don't think it's excellent, which is what I think you need from a detachment for Space Marines.
I think they bring a lot of stuff that are like just off meta enough that people won't prep for it, while also bringing tools that are very useful into this current meta, because they think they have an enhancement for ignore modifiers for a unit, right?
I think so.
No,
I believe they have an
don't know.
enhancement or a strat to do that.
I'd have to double check, but
There's something.
Yeah, I'm
look
pretty
at
sure they
that.
have something like that, which is obviously really good into this meta. And I think I say if you do go a bunch of flamey units, they synergize quite well in the strat.
Yes, sorry. There is an ignores modifiers. It's on Tacticus models only.
Yeah.
So you can't put it in the things you want to put it in, basically.
You can put it on Hellblasters, right?
But
Yes,
they're not
but if you're playing
Melter or Flamer.
Hellblasters,
Yeah.
you probably want to put Hellblasters in a different attachment.
Hellblasters are still good in that attachment, I think, but that's just me.
Yeah, but like I think what we're doing here is we're taking a square peg and putting it into a square hole, but the square hole's just a bit bigger, and it's like, yeah, it does fit, but it doesn't. It's not, it's not smooth. It doesn't do everything I want.
Yeah,
Well-
I guess they're not
Sorry,
bad.
go
I
on.
think they're just
They're
like
not bad.
they're
but
definitely. I think they're a third place detachment. Gladius,
fourth.
Ironstorm.
No, it's Vanguard as well. 'cause
Well,
you
that's my
forget
question. Is Vanguard still good?
The build that
I
a lot
don't
of people are
think so.
playing into doesn't work anymore because the points went up on Centurions and Inceptors, which is what it was there to do. I think was to kind of stop people going, right, here's 18 Inceptors ruining your fun.
I
And
was
they're
about
going
to
to be
do
picked
that.
up. Yeah, I was resisting going, do I buy a second 6, knowing that full well that was a bad choice.
I was going to do it in Deathwatch.
Yes, I know you were. And I think that's the challenge at the moment is whenever you look at any of these detachments, if you're wanting to do shooting, Ironstorm has the suite to do it for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other ones, and I've been trying this, I've even tried the new Dark Angel detachments. If you're trying to use lots of infantry, you're a target. So the reason why Ironstorm's having relative success and people are doing kind of winning more games than they're losing is because they're putting dreadnoughts, tanks, high toughness stuff that's just a pain in the ass to deal with. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the one taking out events, but it's very forgiving. I think that's why people are leaning into it because they get to
Ironstorm
bring
feels like
big
the
stuff.
gatekeeper list, right?
Yeah, it feels like a way you can bring. Here's my 10 units. Each of the models, that's 10 models. It's quite nice and straightforward, but you still get to have things like scouts, so you can play tactical.
I think
Cool.
the thing about Ironstorm is it's quite easy to, well, not easy, but you can play around it, right? Because I mean, I highly rate the ability to go through ruin walls, which obviously Ironstorm does a lot less because it's all vehicles.
Correct.
There's a lot less maneuverable than the other factions are.
It
So
can
I think they're
advance and
vulnerable to
shoot.
being, but I think they're
Leonora.
vulnerable to getting like move blocked by the likes of Endless Swarm.
Agreed. As I saw on Saturday on a stream, it was brilliant to watch someone just sit in the middle on their line.
and things like that. I think they are vulnerable to getting whacked a little bit. Like played around. But yeah,
That's fair.
you're right. It is definitely. I think that's actually a good example of a low skill floor army.
I took it to an
so
event
easy
and
to
did
get
very
into.
well with it without really playing it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You can. It's point and click.
All right, let's blast through these last ones. We're getting a bit late in the day. What do we got up
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, boy.
Aeldari good.
Aeldari.
They play MSU now. MSU's good.
And again, it's a bit more skill requirement rather than just drowning in dice that you can just use willy nilly.
Yeah,
You've
they've
got to be a bit
definitely
more
moved in that
careful with it.
direction. I'm happy to see them in.
The game I played on yesterday was kind of it did not fill me with confidence for what is going to be a future of what Aeldari list will look like. It was a Yunari list with 2 units of Spectres and 3 units of
Scourges.
So all 5 shoot and scoot units, then 2 indirect D cannons, and then like a bunch of bunch of warp spiders as well, going 24 inches. Basically, a bunch of stuff that's you cannot see it, that's going to shoot you, and you will continue to not be able to see it, which is effectively, it's effectively indirect, with Scourges, just not quite as good. But yeah, it just, looking at stuff like that, it's just, oh wow, this is going to continue to be really painful. I think that potentially Phantasm is more annoying to play around now because they might get a 1, they might get a 6, but you have to assume they're going to get a 6 every time, and you might do all this stuff and then find out it's all for nothing because they roll a 1 or they don't want to risk it or whatever, and it's just but yeah.
I feel like the changes may hurt your more casual players more than anyone though.
100%.
Because
Yeah.
I played a Crusade game into a guy that plays once every couple of months, and it hurt him. It wasn't as forgiving as an army to just pick up and play every so often, especially with Wraith blades in it. It was a challenge for him, and it was a shame. It feels like the sins of the successful players is kind of punish the people that do just want to throw together a list. But
Nah, fuck
I think
that.
that's
They're now
inevitable.
at the point they should be,
But
or even still a bit too good.
But at the same time, that tells me that it's now a finesse army and it shouldn't be being played as a casual once every couple of months army. And that's a shame.
Just play the tanky units. It's fine.
Yeah, but he didn't. He didn't want
Yeah.
to.
I think a lot of the people that bandwagoned onto Aeldari when they've been really good are going to ditch it, and you're going to see the faction
like 4
population
months,
shrink a lot.
Yeah, we're already at the point that it was only the diehard players.
There's an awful lot of Eldar armies on eBay.
Yeah, it's going to get to that point where, like end of 9th, where it becomes your kind of army masters playing it because they want to, and that's where I'd like most armies to be a bit. Really.
I think that's a bit unwarranted though, because I think the faction is just still really strong. And just people aren't playing it or experimenting it with them. Yeah, I think you do have to turn your brain on to play the game rather than just leave it off. But yeah, it's still.
I might start looking
a very good army.
some lists for Eldar actually. Now they're at a point where I'm interested and pick them up again, and I've got a lot of the Wraith stuff, so maybe I can do something with that. But yeah, I think in a much better spot, a much healthier spot.
Yeah.
At least there's no one shedding tears for the Aeldari players, which is absolutely true. All right, moving on. What we got? Demons. Who wants to go with demons?
I think demons are criminally underrated. I can't believe people aren't talking about demons. I think they have so much potential to be really good. Like half of their detachment and strats and stuff are good, and then the other half are just a waste. But the ones that are good give them a lot of potential. And I think some of those data sheets are kind of cracked. And obviously, everyone knows the combo with the Blood Throne, I think it is, and the Blood Crushers. Everyone knows that one.
5 damage on your melee.
Yeah, but you can combine that with any Khorne unit, so you have your Flesh Hounds doing 4 damage or whatever. Like that's totally a thing you could do. But even the Slaaneshi units are really strong. Ed, you were talking about Demonettes earlier. Like they're just good data sheets. I think they're just solid. I don't think they have the raw numbers to just bulldoze people. They're another finesse army kind of situation. I think again high skill ceiling. High skill floor rather than a low skill floor. So hard to get into, to learn to play. I think they have tons of potential, and I'm really surprised that people aren't giving them a lot of credit.
100% agree. I'm thinking like in a world where everyone's trying to kill Custodes, why aren't people running swarms of demons?
Yeah.
Like all the points went down on the battle line units, right? Like they've all got invulns. Maybe not the best invulns, but they've got it's 4 ups, right? 4 up invulns?
5.
Well,
on an 11-point demonette, like a 5 up invuln is pretty
that's
good.
not nothing, man. You could just clog the board up.
Yeah. I don't know if they're cheap enough to like truly clog the board, but I think you can definitely put out more models than your opponent's expecting.
Like we need Franco to start doing content, man.
Call him out. The super high damage bloodletters as well are really good. So
they're interesting. I don't know how much that actually translates to on the board. I'd be interested.
Sure, and it's just another thing that you can do, right? It's another tool that you can take.
I assume you probably put like 1 or 2 buffs on the unit, as opposed to you take them to the moon. But like having that flexibility to be able to do it is, as you say, it is good.
I think if you were going to do that infantry swarm thing, then it could be quite a nice little thing you could run.
Also, Kairos Fate Waver went down. My favorite model.
Fucking Kairos.
Such good indirect shooting.
His las cannon shot is not friendly.
It's great.
Kairos will be forever burned into my memory as evil, pure evil.
Demons are surprisingly good. Why aren't more people playing them? Let's go on.
The wheel says, I just removed demons.
So demons are really interesting.
Yeah, they're really good.
I must have
probably
had them there twice.
We should basically see a lot more swarm armies of it, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we?
Dark Angels.
It's dead.
So, as an army, it is 2 units in a Space Marine Codex detachment, and that's a shame. Obviously, the supplement itself is only out this weekend, so we haven't seen that in full flow, and the points changes will not fix it, unfortunately, I don't think.
I feel like you've gone through all of the stages of grief.
Yeah, and it's a shame.
And
like,
it hasn't even
Deathwing
released
Knights
yet.
are they're a great bully piece as a little 5-man, like they were previously when you could take them in 10s, but they're still, I'm thinking, going to be too expensive, so you won't see it. And then why wouldn't you just take Ironstorm? It's the age-old thing of, if I want to do a thing well, why am I not taking Ironstorm? Why am I not building a Gladius list if I don't want to take Ironstorm? And the 3 detachments in the supplement, we won't see. So I think ironically Dark Angels are doing really well, but I feel it's a lie. It's Codex Space Marines with Azrael and a Dark Shroud.
Pretty much.
And that will be all we'll see of them for a while. It will not be Inner Circle companions because no.
Right, remove them from the wheel, Jack, as the competitive player base has removed them from the game.
Yeah, they're gone.
I was just going to say, I do think Dark Angel players are a little bit battle shocked by the changes to their Terminators.
Still got OC though. Still got OC, man. Still got OC.
I think they have more potential than people giving them credit for. They ain't AdMech level. I don't think they're that bad. But I totally understand.
Is when the Blood Angels book comes out, and Scribo pointed this out, and it broke my heart. When the first company, Death Company, go away, like the non-Primaris ones go away, which they realistically will do with how Games Workshop are managing their models. Yeah, Blood Angels are probably dead. Maybe we look at Dark Angels again then. Maybe that's what it takes for Blood Angels to die a death.
I'm living on borrowed time. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, let's give it a spin. AdMech.
As they were.
Who never heard of you?
They didn't get it.
The Dataslate didn't touch them. Yeah.
Them and Necrons sat at opposite sides of the win rate, and one of them's happy about it, and one of them really fucking isn't.
And they just need to be squished somewhere into the middle together. But I'm not sure points will help with AdMech. That's going to be a careful one. They're going to have to be very careful with that.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I think there's a lot of potential. I think in their detachments and like their enhancements and stuff like that, and even in their data sheets, I think there's a lot of potential in there. I think they're undercooked numbers wise,
just a little bit. You're just like
not necessarily, not necessarily making stuff cheaper. It's like it's just little stuff in the rules, like little inequalities. Like I'm struggling to think of one for AdMech right now because I don't play them, but a good one in Tau is like there's an enhancement to let you use Strap twice, but it doesn't let you do it for free, right? The AdMech Codex is like littered with stuff like that, where it's like 80% of what other people get, but it's like not quite as good.
Their Codex is you are allowed to play the game at a tournament, but you won't have fun.
Yeah.
You leave your good stuff at home because we've got good stuff at home.
Yeah. Leaving the good stuff at home because you're bringing AdMech.
Yeah. I think probably the points cost only wants to go down like a little bit, and stuff wants to be made like just a little bit better. Sorry, as in points cost wants to go up a little bit, and stuff wants to be made a little bit better. I think
if we see the troops go down too much, they're going to be playing the Davy special.
No.
This is what I'm afraid of. So I think points need to want to go up on stuff rather than down, and then make stuff like a little bit better.
I think we might see the first codex to get an actual detachment change personally on this one. I feel like there's a few tweaks that are needed because I don't think
we're far enough into the edition that they will hold up their hands and say we need to do this.
I don't think it necessarily will happen soon, but I feel like it will happen at some point.
That's
because it's just it feels like they'll try to fix it with some small point changes. It won't do anything, and then Christmas time we'll suddenly have AdMech sparking a bit of joy if we're lucky.
Clever invective hitting on the nose twice. He says, if I was in charge, I'd rather have Dark Angels have a good supplement and no access to the Codex. And then he also says, the Codex feels like an employee was writing it, gave 2 weeks notice, and then coasted until the end of the work assignment. Both of those are true, my dude.
It's a shame.
And Leo says 27 chickens is a list already at 2,000 bucks one. This
Yeah.
is this is the issue we've had since 8th edition. I've been wanting to play AdMech since 8th edition. I have the start of an AdMech list since 8th edition. I'm not going to have 27 walkers. Like, it's not.
It puts me off.
Yeah. All right. What do we got?
Uh-oh.
The wheel says
All hail the wheel.
Again, one we can skip a little bit.
Necrons.
Necrons, not as good as people were worried they would be. Still too good.
Yeah, they're not pre-Dataslate CSM Aeldari.
No.
And they definitely have, as we will cover on this week's Matchup Plus, they have a lot of counters and ways to play around them. And the different detachments they're not all necessarily good against the same stuff. So I think at least gives you a lot of room to play around. As existence cases in the chat, Satans are still a problem. They probably are. They probably could stand to
only
lose.
if you're not playing the factions with ignore modifiers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think their rules need to change. I think the points just need to go up. They're just too cheap. I don't think their defenses are necessarily the problem. You just have way too many.
I don't think anyone would be upset if they went up to 300 points a model. Like, realistically. Like, no one's going to argue with that.
They can probably go up to more than that. They can probably go to 350.
If you got to the point,
It'd be fine.
If you got to the point where you couldn't justifiably put in 3 in a 2,000 point list, I think I'd be happy then.
I mean, they're meant to be like the centerpiece model, really cool looking, like super weapon, right? Having like 4 of them or 3 of them is like a bit. Even to me, 2 of them is like, well, that's like a crazy skew list. That's 2 to 10. Whoa, like,
well, 3 is still not like the way to write a good list. So
sure, I'm just taking an example, right? Because that's going to make 3 to 10 is just going to make a lot of people have no fun in their game. So.
Is restricting armies to 1 a viable option?
No, you don't need to do that.
No, I don't think.
Like,
I think you just increase the points until it's an unattractive option.
Like, every time they do that, it sucks. Like, when they change the buggies in a way that people were just like, oh, hey, I have models that I can't use now.
Yeah.
That's a big feels bad.
It's admitting defeat on a balance front.
Sean says he's been seeing 6 in lists, and how many of those have been winning GT, Sean? If the answer is any, I am going to start printing 3 more. Like, that's my idea of a good time.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. If you want any more details on what we think about Necrons, you can watch Matchup Plus this week.
It's a good one.
Right.
Thursday.
These are 3 fun factions to talk about.
Oh god.
God.
S tier, absolute S tier. They've got indirect.
Not a problem.
I won't go first on this one.
Your counterpoint, Jack, to S tier.
So I think the thing with Guard is that their main strength is that they have no real weaknesses. You can build a list with a bunch of Gassikin, which are just super strong all-rounders. You just get good all-round shooting platforms with Manticores, and tank commanders, even the Rogal Dawn, if you want to take it as a perfectly viable choice. I think it's really easy. Yeah, so no real like big glaring weaknesses. There's nothing that Guard can't deal with. The downside of Guard is that they're quite hard to play. I don't think that they're S tier because they don't have they're not as forgiving as what as a faction like Necron is, or what Aeldari or CSM used to be. And I think they're more vulnerable to bad dice than any of those factions are or were. So I don't think you can put them into S tier for that, because it's not like anyone can just pick Guard and win like a 32-man 2-dayer, right? Which I think is kind of a real thing you have to consider for an S tier faction. So yeah, I think Guard are good, but if you're not a good pilot, you're not going to get the most out of them, I don't think.
I think that's a reasonable take. Shall we move on?
Not unless there's anything anyone else wants to say about them.
Just
Go with it.
No, they seem reasonable.
I hope their indirect dies in a fucking pit, but
Yeah.
other than that.
All right.
I play Catan, so who am I to...
And it's Orks.
Ooh,
I think Orks are
John.
criminally underrated.
They
But I don't
are-
know what happened in the Balance Dataslate for them, unfortunately, so I can't really comment.
I'm going to tell you what happened.
Mm,
All of their shooting units got cheaper. I'm waiting for a book. As soon as that book comes out, I am fucking ready. I cannot wait to play another freebooters list or something approaching that.
Yeah,
Dread
an
War,
archetype of it, yeah.
anything like that. There's going to be something that absolutely gets my goat going. I can feel it. And they buffed units like at the right time because their codex is coming soon. TM.
Yeah. So I think why we maybe don't see as many is you get a few Orc players like ourselves, like me and Ed, that enjoyed playing them in a specific way, and the index doesn't really benefit or accentuate you being able to play that. Like bringing some buggies and vehicle spam doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it becoming, to start with, just a lot of bodies coming out of trucks. And that game, it can be fun. Don't get me wrong. I've played a bit with it now, and I can see its merit. But it is you play in one way, and any Orc player will tell you this. Like if they're not just really, really, really wanting to just take just that exact same list every time, they'll want to bring out some weird and crazy stuff. And Orcs, unfortunately, their shooting is just not great. So you can't experiment with some of those units. And it becomes the situation that we've got now where you just don't. Like, I've not seen any lists using a Morkanaut or a Gorkanaut recently, and that's a shame. I haven't for probably 2 or 3 editions, but that's not the point. Like, people were trying them. We may start to see Stompers in the horizon, though. So I feel like Orcs are something we're going to have to maybe recalibrate how we handle moving down the line. Like, it's not going to be buggy trucks full of stuff and battle wagons full of stuff. We might start to see, at least Games Workshop were trying to suggest that to us by saying everyone buy a Stomper, which in reality I think might mean that they've just got a lot of leftover stock. But
Imagine if Orcs had Sky Splinter Assault. Imagine if they were living that life.
They did in 9th edition. They had a very similar detachment.
So a Cult of Speed, that would be great. A Cult of Speed where the boys can get in and out of their trucks would be fantastic, because that's what the boarding ramps on those trucks are supposed to do, is let you get off a truck after it's moved.
They're already like the cheapest, most efficient transport in the game. We probably shouldn't give them anything else.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of potential in Orcs. I think not a lot of. I don't see much innovation. Whenever I've played against Orcs, it's been very samey lists, and those samey lists, a lot of their units have been nerfed with like knobs, trucks, and Squidhog boys all getting points increases.
It became an echo chamber, the list kind of dev for them.
Yeah, I definitely think they could stand to get a bit more innovation there. I think there's definitely a really good list hidden away in there, but not many really good players play Orcs. There's like 1 or 2. So it's not much innovation going on there. So you probably won't see anything until it like wins a GT or something.
I kind of feel like they're at their peak for where they're going to be with what they've got.
I think
soon as they get a codex, they will explode.
You get people like Brian Seep, who's been trying to use them and is a very, very, very competent player.
Mm-hmm.
We've not seen him take out a GT with it. He's been close. He's gotten up there. Yeah. But I feel like that's the problem at the moment. That index is just teeters there with some good skill expression, like great skill expression. Sorry, I don't want to discount it, but it just feels at the moment like until that book drops, they're kind of where they are, and they're in a nice spot. It's just a very lackluster way to play if that's not how you want to play them, and I think that puts off a lot of the core kind of people like me that have 2 armies, 3 armies, kind of teeter around a couple of armies.
I think there's still a lemon half squeezed. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you try
more juice to get out of there.
Shooting. Trust me, there's some of those sheets look great, and then when you remember that they're hitting on 5s unless they stand still, you're just like.
That flash kits unit is the only thing to one shot a ghost kill with shooting.
And that's because
for me
it's
anyway.
Exceptional Orc shooting. That's the thing.
Problem is you can only
unusual.
one of them.
Yeah.
So it's hard to build around. All right, take us home. GSC. What do you got?
I'm not going to spin the wheel because there's one thing on there.
Spin it.
I can't. There you go. All right, GSC is last but not forgotten, as most of the player base seems to have thought about GSC being forgotten.
Apart from you, Jack, eh? You've been playing them recently.
Yeah, I have. Really interesting. I think they have. I guess they have the benefit of not having the old versions of GSC from from release GSE to colour my perception.
Yeah.
I think they're a faction with a lot of tools, a lot of raws, a lot of skill expression. I think they have a lot of unique damage output that kills a lot of stuff in this meta. I think that they could be quite well positioned. They just don't get anywhere near as much stuff on the board as they used to get, which makes them a lot more. They can be a lot more unforgiving, particularly if you just get bad rolls on those cult ambush rolls to not get units back. But yeah, I think they have a lot of potential. I'm actually really interested to play them a lot more. I'm probably more interested to play GST at the moment than I am to play Tau. So yeah, I think there's quite a few. Even though it's a small small roster, like a small roster of units, they do have a lot of build options. I think because you can add the Imperial Guard stuff in there if you want to, or you can leave it out. There's just a lot of stuff that you can do. I just think it's a really interesting faction.
Is there any loss to your rules if you take Imperial Guard?
Don't think so.
No, it's just that they don't synergize in any way. So the Imperial Guard units can't buff the GSC units, and the GSC units can't buff the Guard. But you can take 2 Basilisks, right, and just and a Sentinel, and then to buff those Basilisks if you want to, and that's just solid. Or you can take a bunch of Kassakin; they're just efficient.
Yeah.
So
because you don't get the orders by putting them in as Brew Brothers.
You don't get orders, but you don't get the Kassakin get orders because that's in their data sheet. Right?
They get their own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah, as Christopher Lyle says in the chat, the buff, one of the buffs they got from the Dataslate is because basically every GSC list is going to have a redeploy. So the ability to redeploy one of your infiltrate or 3 of your infiltrators is very, very strong, and keep them infiltrating. So yeah, I think they have a lot of potential. I think they're highly underrated right now, and I wish I had a full army of them to take to events.
I think a lot of the player base got burnt after the initial changes to them, sort of after the summer last year, and they've just gone off to play other things.
They were so good before; they're probably a shadow of where they were before. But I still think they're really good.
Yeah, they played close games and won into Aeldari on release, so that shows you how good.
That tells you really, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's quickly rattle through these podcast questions, and then we'll call it a night because we have been going for a while. So,
yeah.
First of all, Sai asks, Psycanon improvements aside, what is the cause for Grey Knights now being a top table competitor since the Dataslate? And Harley says, other armies getting nerfed. I think that's fair. And I think, the other things that we talked about when we went through, anyone got anything to add to what we were talking about earlier?
Not really. To me, it feels like all ships are kind of risen by a high tide, right? Like, if you nuke everything else back down to the level, you're going to seem better. Just that's the nature of it, right?
Yeah, Aeldari and Chaos, I think, were particularly rough for the Grey Knights to take on. So popping them down a little bit is very helpful. And then they have a good matchup into Necrons, which are the biggest boogeyman of the current meta. So I think that helps them a lot.
Lovely stuff. Bloodrender says, which bad units would you say should get used more than they do in game? Anyone got a hot take on this one?
Looters.
No.
Are they the flamer ones?
No, they're the autocannons.
Yeah.
Strength 8, AP 1-2 damage, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to watch Ed's face then, just because there's people trying to make them work, and it's just I wish that they were better.
I've spent a lot of time looking at every ranged weapon in the Orc Codex. Thank you very much.
It hurts, doesn't it?
It's not it.
I have 20 of them painted. I want them to work.
The actual answer to this is it's detachment dependent. So objectively, Wolfen are a shell of their former self. But, if you're taking them in Stormlance, you're able to advance and charge. They're a cheap unit. They're very cheap. They can do actions. They're fine in that. Or Van Vets with heirloom weapons and melter pistols. I will fucking die on the hill that they're bad. But if you give them a Storm Shield and put them with, not Lamartis, because the Sangri Priest, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. Suddenly you've got a squad, that's got a 4-up invuln and a 5-up feel no pain. And that's actually not bad. Play them in Sons of Sanguinius. You get them up to a strength 7, AP 2, something like that, with a reasonable number of attacks. There's something there, you know. The extra AP comes from the Sang Priest as well. It's not just from the detachment.
Yeah,
So
improves
you
it
know,
by 1.
yeah, you can use bad units if you can find ways to make them good, but you've got to work out whether you're just doing it to be quirky and you're making your list worse by putting a bad thing in that's kind of okay in your detachment, instead of taking something that was good and is really good in your detachment.
You've just described my history since 9th edition.
I have indeed.
My vote for the unit is Hybrid Metamorphs. They can attest to this. I think that unit
very
is
good.
massively underrated. Very
that the
few
melee
GSC. Yes, it's the melee one that can choose their attack profile. They usually lose out to Aberrants, but they're like half the cost for like more attacks. They have the grenade stratagem. They can all be armed with hand flamers. They just have a lot of extra utility, than the Aberrants normally don't. Well, the Aberrants won't get. But you don't normally see them on the tables. But yeah, massively underrated, I think.
Lovely stuff. And High Fleet Phil says, is Mission 2 on UKTC made for Custodes, and do you have any good ideas on how to stop them? So UKTC Mission 2 is, I believe it is quarter deployments, and it is supply drop. Supply drop is turn 3, one of the objectives goes away, turn 4, another of the objectives goes away. Yeah, this is, or is it 4 and 5? I can never remember. Anyway, yeah,
It's the last 2, I think.
Yeah, that's right, 4 and 5. This is Custodes heaven. It absolutely is. How do you stop them? Should have played Custodes, loser.
Dodge the matchup.
Yeah, basically. Focus. You've got to focus fire. Once you know where, the points are going to be, get as much secondary as you can, and then try and deny as much primary as you can. You probably won't score high on primary later in the game, and your opponent will get, big scores. But if you can deny them a bit of primary, get more secondary than them, the classic game plan into Custodes.
It's really easy to deny secondary, to deny primary on this mission. So if you focus on denying that, then you can just make it into a last turn. Like whoever goes second wins, basically, which is not necessarily a good thing because if you may go first. But yeah, I think focus on primary denial is probably the best way to get the best out of that mission.
High Fleet Phil also says to play devil's advocate, if you could go back to 9th, would you? And if so, why? Personally, he misses the personal stamp that wrist writing was. Yeah, 100%. I'd go back in a heartbeat. I really enjoyed 9th edition. I think 10th edition is a worse game in most respects. It's getting there. It's getting better, but 9th edition was really good.
For me, it's the building and fly rules. I can get in a bin, like, as a Tau player. Like, I just hate it. Other than that, like, if that wasn't there, I'd be happy with 10th edition. But as it stands, it just makes the game so much more of a faff to play. So that annoys me. But then I've never been one for going backwards, so probably just stick where I am.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's weird to look back and go, yeah, I'd prefer to do that. I think I'm in the camp of, I like 10th. It's cool. This is what the rules are. And yeah.
I went back so far. I'm now playing fantasy again. So
every edition's had its good spots and also downsides. Like none of them have been perfect. Some have been closer than others, but yeah.
The big change is I came back in 8th. 8th was okay. 9th was better. 10th is worse. It feels kind of rough to go in that direction.
Yeah. Every edition's a new adventure, right?
Yeah.
All right. Fucking Dora the Explorer over here. Can you say friends? Fuck your friends.
Make me a sandwich.
If you could swap any 2 10th edition characters from separate factions, who would it be and why? That is interesting. Anyone got any thoughts on this one?
Sorry, I think I cut out there. What was that one again? Sorry.
I was laughing. Sorry.
If you could swap any 2 characters from 10th edition armies, what would it be? Basically, what faction character do you want in another faction? Is the
Oh, this is easy. I want Farsight in GSC.
Okay.
Because he can deep strike within 3 then. And he can actually use his special rule when he comes in from Deep Strike to give +1 to wound to the entire unit.
That's pretty fun.
And then he also has a bit of combat, which is fun.
Yeah. I'd love to take a Catan in like any army. Give me Catan and Custodes. Oh, I'd take that. I'd probably swap Trajan for Catan. Genuinely, like Trajan's
Yeah,
good. but,
Trajan's
like,
outstanding, isn't he?
if I could have the Transcendent Catan instead of Trajan, I'd just have 3 of those and then 15 Wardens. That'd be my list reign. That'd be great. Anyone else?
I'd like to give anyone else a Swarm Lord.
Oh,
What if you kept
That's
Swarm Lord but changed his points with like a Space Marine Apothecary?
Well, you know what?
no,
Maybe, yeah.
you can't
maybe.
have those points. I'm not
This
taking a
is-
hit for him.
What other units have a +1 CP buff? Like, you get another CP a turn. I want it at the same point as that. Plus a
Azrael.
Calidus Assassin.
Leontis.
How many
He's
points is he?
130, I want to say.
Okay,
about
so
that for
plus a
Azrael as
Calidus,
well.
which is 100, so that'd be 230. So it's still too expensive. Give me a 20% discount on that, and I'll take it.
That's fair. That's fair. Finally, Hannibal says, based on the Goonhammer being a 6-round event, do you think more UK events should go to 6 rounds rather than 5?
No,
Based on the group chat after that event,
No.
Everyone fucking hated their lives. They were
No.
all really tired.
I would say it's a nice change. And actually, while I'm playing the games, it was great. But when I got home, I passed the shit out. Like, I was so like knackered. But you know what? Like, when we played the 5th game, and I was on 3-2, I was like, no, like I'm going for the, you just still got the eye of the tiger. So, it's just a different thing.
So, is it to purely get a definitive winner without having to do a shadow round? That's
No,
what
I
we're
don't
doing,
think so,
right?
because there was only 48 players. So they decided it was 6 players to start with.
They've
Yeah.
always done 6-round events, right?
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware.
Because there was a big discussion during 9th about having a final winner being defined by an event, and so a lot of events were pushing to do the 6 rounds to get that kind of just do your 6 rounds, you've got a winner. You don't have to do any of the shadow round malarkey.
The problem
And-
is the amount of players that you have in the UKTC, you still would need another round.
And I don't think it's necessary for your bottom half of the pack. They don't need to be playing that 6th game to find out where they are in the middle of the pack, when they can go home and have dinner and see their family. And it's a hobby at the end of the day. If you're going to be then ill or absolutely wiped out for the next 2-3 days, what's the point?
Well, here's a question: is it a value for money thing? Do you think that £55 a ticket, offering 6 games over 5 games, just sounds like better value, and therefore puts you in a better position in the market?
I prefer 6-game events. I would definitely more. I don't think they all need to be 6-game events, particularly the smaller ones. But anything over like probably over 48, I would say, probably wants to be 6.
Have you played
I really
any 6-game
like.
events?
Hmm?
Have you played any 6-game events?
Yeah, I played lots of 6-game events for fantasy.
Right, 'cause that was a
not
big
many.
thing. In...
Yeah, not for 40k, but yeah, I just like the I don't have an issue with the endurance side of it. I just
It's
never had
the
a problem
travel.
with that.
Like, you're
Yeah,
not
the travel
pushing it
can
for,
be
like,
painful for
an
some
hour
people
long.
as well. Understandable.
Just go after 5 games.
Yeah, but we've had this whole thing about manners about just dropping, so it's no different to that really. And if you then have half the field dropping, if then it's defined by strength of schedule and half the field's dropped, you then
It's a good point.
absolutely fuck everyone else. So
Yeah.
it's just no one wins in that situation.
I definitely
One
do
person
like
does.
the idea of there being
All right,
several.
Josh wins.
I like the idea of there being several 6-game events that you can go to. Like I would rather there be a choice, like some of each. I think that
100%.
variety is the spice of life, right? I'm all about that. Less 5-game UKTC events everywhere you go, and more like different terrain sets, different mission packs, and
But
number of games.
The unfortunate reality of this, though, is the market is established by what people attend. And what I've seen over the course of 9th edition, people went more diverse. They did their own things, and people didn't go for it as much. Like, despite me being quite an advocate of, I liked the variety of terrain, it doesn't always sell out. So people then went, right, people like this UKTC format. will do it, and people preferred doing 5-round events. So it became a situation where it became established in the norm because that's what people were buying out and selling out of. So I think we've kind of gotten to this point now where even if you do want that variety, people don't want to risk it because the cost of a hall is too expensive. And if you've got to be open later, rent the hall into the evening, maybe even break down the next morning, that adds added costs as well, potentially.
I guess it
quite
depends, right?
different,
Because I think people went more to UKT. I think that you can flip that in reverse, right? People may not have gone to that event because the terrain wasn't good, and then the UKTC terrain in 9th edition was very good because it was very well suited for that edition. But yeah, it's just I'm
it's a strange one. I'm not sure there's a right answer to it, but
yeah, probably not.
Yeah, because we don't really get GW terrain events over here apart from Games Workshop's own stuff at Warhammer World.
That's shocking. We definitely need more GW terrain events.
Man, you know, like the
Exactly,
Goonhammer
so we're
terrain was so different to anything we've played on, and it was
Yeah.
awesome. It was so cool to try something different.
Some of those maps were really cool looking.
I got to take a winged hive tyrant. It was awesome. It was, and it was the MVP in the list for the entire weekend.
Lovely stuff. All right, well, thank you for joining us. It's been a blast. We'll be back next week. We've got plenty of content coming to you this week as well. Keep an eye out for that. As mentioned before, subscribers will be getting that a day early on a lot of the content. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.